Three, two, one.
You are now tuned in to the StclairSpeaks Show.
What's going on, guys? It's Yahavy David Clair Speaks, and you are now tuned in to the StclairSpeaks Show.
You are now tuned in to the StclairSpeaks Show.
Welcome back to the StclairSpeaks Show podcast. I'm your host, Yahavy Clair, sitting down with another amazing guest today, all the way from Costa Rica. I am sitting down with Molly Ruland. She is the CEO and founder of Heartcast Media, a digital content agency focused on personal branding for founders, brands, and attorneys. Molly specializes in producing high-quality branded video content for businesses that want to generate revenue and create strategic relationships through content marketing. Molly is also a speaker about business, of podcasting. Now, of course, you're listening to the show. You know I love podcasting. And right before we started recording, I told Molly this is one of those interviews that I've had circled on my calendar because I'm super excited to pick her brain and just really dive into the meat and potatoes of branding, podcasting, media, content creation, all that cool stuff. Molly, welcome to the StclairSpeaks Show podcast. Please give our listeners a 3 to 5 minute introduction on yourself, your brand, your business, and of course, what brings you onto the show.
Oh, right on. Well, that's quite the introduction. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your enthusiasm, and I I love that you're very animated. So you're holding your microphone because you know that you move around too much.
That's me.
But that's a sign of a professional right there who cares about how you sound. So all the respects are for sure. Let's see. I've been in multimedia for 23 years. I was based in Washington, D.C. I was really focused on supporting community through art, music, and culture. So I booked for 160 artists. I had a 3-story building across the street from the legendary Howard Theater. We had a live music stage, retail store, podcast studio, recording studio. Recorded 86 bands in 11 months, 26 of them go-go bands. So like we definitely had a lot of experience creating content, but I was more in the artistic world. And then I took the pivot to work more for businesses in 2018 when I formed Heartcast Media. And so I'm taking everything that I learned in the music business and like local music ethos and applied that to working with businesses and creating content that's intentional and looks good, right? Because I'm an artist and is effective content. So I've owned this company for about 4 years. We had a brick and mortar studio and the pandemic hit and we closed the studio, but we went fully remote. And so I took that opportunity to get out while I could, and I moved to Costa Rica to show my clients that I could be in another country and still serve them properly. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years here in Costa Rica and growing the business and hanging out with cool people like you.
This is so awesome. Okay, so I want to swing back. I love to dive into how you got to this point. Okay, like why content creation, why branding, and how does that all translate, and how is that important to you?
Well, I mean, I grew up in a very like musical household and playing musical instruments, and my dad and all of his friends were like great public speakers, and so it's sort of just in my DNA. Like my ancestors were bartenders and bootleggers who came over from Ireland because they were starving to death during the potato famine, and created a bunch of art and culture up and down the East Coast with their immigrant ways, and so it's sort of in my DNA to be around creatives and what I really enjoy, like when I like something, I want to tell everybody. It's just natural for me. And that's kind of where it all began, was like, oh, this band. Like the first band I ever booked, I was sitting in a restaurant the other day, and the first band I ever booked came on the radio. I'm in Costa Rica. I'm in another country, and like they're international touring sensations. And I'm like, yeah, I booked them in a strip mall in Virginia in 2001, right? So that's always been the core, is like if I'm really excited about something, I want to share it with people. And then I found a way to share it with people in a way that would get them just as excited, like cutting out the noise and delivering it in a way with the core values that I saw and making it a little bit more visible for other people so they could get excited about it as well. So that's really the kind of the core of all of it.
Okay. let's dive right into it because I'm like ready to roll up my sleeves and dive into this because I have some good questions for you today. So I want to talk to you about what do you think is the most important element of a successful personal brand and how do you help your clients develop that?
I think authenticity and consistency. Like you got to be consistent. Like pick your branding. Like have a brand guide, right? You can make one yourself on Canva. It's not that serious. What are your fonts? What are your colors? And always use those. People get creative, too creative, and then there's no consistency. People don't know what your brand is. And then authenticity. Um, I got an email from somebody, and it said. What does it say? It said authenticity. It wasn't authenticity, but it was like authenticity has its consequences, right? And those consequences are very positive. Like if you're in business, you should really be yourself all of the time because some people are going to say, not for me, I'm out, I'd never work with that person. But the people who do want to work with you really want to work with you. And so I think it's really important to be very specific in your messaging and be very, very authentic. Like I curse a lot. People tell me I should be a stand-up comedian. Like, I get that all the time. And so, like, when I get on stage, I definitely talk smack about certain groups of people in my own little way. And I get it in, and I never let go of that. And I'm sure some people walk away saying, I'm going to pray for her. And then other people are like, I love her. And I'm cool with that. I'm cool if 1 out of 100 people is like, I love her. And I think that's what branding is. Like, don't try to be like everybody else. Don't do what everybody else is doing. Do you. Because you're going to be you. And it's not just about the good times. Like, what about the bad times when a client's pissing you off? You're going to be yourself then, too. So you better make sure you didn't sell this package that isn't really consistent with who you actually are.
I love that. Unapologetically yourself. Like, that's what it's all about. Because here's my take on it. It's like, man, like if a client wants to connect with you because you're you, like, yeah, you have a great service, but they want to be with someone that's authentic. Like, hey, this is who she is, right? So that brand is a thing. I love that. This is what gets me really excited. Okay, so I want to talk to you about creating branded video content, and I'm in this space, of course, in podcasting, and I've been doing this for the last 3 years now, and I found a lot of joy in taking like little sound bites here and there. I'm like, that's a good sound bite for LinkedIn or Instagram or what have you. Can you talk to us about branded content? What should that look like? Is there a message? And I've also heard someone say this. I also heard someone say this. Sometimes you're going to say the same thing over and over again. Like it gets a little repetitive because it's your brand when you're talking about it. How do you go about that in brand marketing and video?
Well, I think it's all about being like really strategic and intentional with your content, right? And I think that where you get like I think there's this big trap right now, the funnel trap. And it's like, man, that's not real. Like a funnel implies that you have like all this massive amount of traffic that you're funneling down into a smaller stream. And I don't think that's realistic. I think that we're not trying to speak to 1 million people. You don't need to go viral on TikTok. You don't need LinkedIn posts that have 17 million impressions, right? Because are they converting into clients? And that's really what's important is are you reaching your ideal client? And so I think there's a lot of people making content for the sake of making content. For example, right? I think a branded podcast should be used strictly as a business development tool. My theory is that the guest is more important than the audience. It doesn't matter if you get 50 downloads or 5 or 5,000. What you set out to do is create a relationship with that guest. So if you're a business and you want to have a podcast, don't interview successful entrepreneurs. Think about the 12 people that could move the needle in your business. You sell insurance? Who organizes the insurance brokers convention? Have them on your podcast. Like, think bigger. Who can open doors for you? Who can move the needle in your business? That's who you should interview. And you should create great assets for them. And you should create a runway to follow up with them. Hey, Molly, thanks so much for being on the podcast. I'd love it if you were on the board of directors. Hey, Molly, thanks for coming on my podcast. Here's 3 graphics, one of them with a quote you said, your face on it. And by the way, would you speak at my next event? Would you hear my next pitch? Would you put this in front of somebody? Would you make this introduction? That's what a branded podcast is. And so social media doesn't matter. So this trap of like putting it in front of 1 million people ain't it. It's all about who are you interviewing and how can that relationship not just benefit you, but it's about relationships. I mean, life is all about relationships ultimately, and it should be the same thing in business. So I have a slightly different, like, spicy take on how to use a branded podcast or branded content, right? It's not always, people think about like Colgate and having a podcast about toothbrushes, but I'm like, no, think like relationships. You're not going to reach the masses with anything unless you put a ton of money behind it. So it's really about the relationships you're creating with your audience and with your guests.
That's so, man. Whew. I gotta let that breathe for a little bit. But you're preaching the word. You're like, this is what I'm talking about. This is why I had this marked on my calendar. You're bringing a fire today. I want to swing back to something that you mentioned earlier in the interview, kind of like staying in your lane, like niching down. I think where a lot of people have a lot of hiccups is like they want to do this, they want to do that. Like how do you niche down and hone into what you want to do and kind of just brand out from there?
So about 4 years ago, when I formed the company, I had a business partner, and she had the MBA, and she knew about business, and she didn't last very long. So I was left with this new company, and I had the creative talent and a lot of other skills, but not the MBA. So I set out to read all these books, and I read 135 books in the last 3.5 years, all about business development. And the greatest takeaway that I got was take the straightest path to the money. Out of all those books, there's a lot about leadership, a lot about other stuff, but take the straightest path to the money. And I think that like too often we're creating content to reach people and we're doing too many things when really it's like, take the straightest path to the money. Where are your clients? Create content for them and really imagine who are you creating content for? Because I think a lot of times, like Donald Miller has a book called Story Brand, and he talks about the hero of the story in your services is not you, it's your customer. And so often on people's websites, it's like, I've been in marketing for 23 years. I'm going to do this. We're going to do this for you. We're going to do this. That's not their pain point. It should say, imagine having all of your social media like organized, targeted, posted, and delivered without having to lift a finger. Imagine knowing that like all your work is done and you don't have to think about it. Like the customer is the hero of the journey. And so when you think about who can you solve problems for and how do you speak exactly to them, but not about yourself, you got to speak about them. So if you're not really, really clear on who your customer is, then your marketing is going to be all over the place and nobody's going to see themselves in it.
Man, Molly, you got me like, sometimes as a podcast host, I do need to say this. Sometimes it's like, I have to remember that I'm actually hosting this because I just want to take this in and listen because this is spot on. So how are you staying up to date? Because like the market's constantly shifting, things are constantly changing. AI is taking over in new form. How are you staying up to date with the market trends? Because in the beginning of the pandemic, all of this was different, but now here in 2023, look at where we're at now. So how are you staying so up to date?
Well, listen, there's a lot of things to distract you, bells and whistles, new things, new this. But like at the end of the day, like I'm not on TikTok because my clients aren't on TikTok. I don't need to be there. I'm not fully invested in Facebook because I don't need to be there. So there could be all these trends and things happening with Reels and this and that. But if that's like that, it doesn't matter. And it's really easy to get distracted by those things. But at the end of the day, you should direct your content where your marketing, where your customers are. A lot of my clients are on LinkedIn. Who hires us? Businesses. We work with businesses, brands, nonprofits, government agencies. We know some coaches, some people for like the short form video and stuff like that. But really, we're working with businesses. We're a B2B company. So they're not on Facebook looking for vendors. So I'm not going to invest time in there. I post on Instagram so that it looks pretty. We're a media company after all. It better look good. You know what I mean? But does it get me anything? No, it's a waste of time.
Yeah. Oh, man, it's definitely kind of like going back to what we talked about, kind of like mentioned this, like niching down, like stay in your lane. Okay, where are you getting your clients from? LinkedIn. Okay, where should you post your content? LinkedIn. You don't want to be on Snapchat and TikTok. Doesn't make any sense. It's kind of like it's hustling backwards.
It's a trip, but like it's a trap. Like you're literally like, I got to do this, I got to do that, and you're like, but why? Like, like LinkedIn newsletters, like here's the pro tip of all time. LinkedIn newsletters are popping right now. Like I have like roughly 4,000 followers. I started a newsletter, I have 970 subscribers. What? That doesn't even make sense. If all my clients are on LinkedIn and 1,000 people opted into my newsletter, so when I write a newsletter, they get a notification on LinkedIn and a notification in their email. And if I write a newsletter that's valuable to them and a good CTA at the bottom, I'm going to get business from that. And that'll serve me better than doing lives and doing this and doing that. And, the stuff that kills me is that people are like, I have a podcast and it's just them on their phone. I'm like, yo, that's not first of all, on behalf of podcasters, no, that is not a podcast. Not to be all nitty gritty about it, but no, that is not a podcast. And why are you doing that? Why would you do something off your telephone on an audio first platform? Stop doing all these things to check boxes. You could just do one LinkedIn newsletter with a strong CTA and make tons of money. You don't need to be everywhere all the time. It's a trap.
Oh my gosh. Can we just clap it up real quick? We're going to have to clap it up real quick.
You're gassing me up too much. I'm going to be like, I'm just going to stay online all day with you. Be like,
Oh, you're good. So how are you measuring, how do you measure the success of content marketing campaigns, and like, what are the metrics that are most important to track? Is it like clicks, analytics? Because is it insights? Like, what is it for you?
Results. I mean, we can look at analytics and say, hey, people like this over that or whatever. But at the end of the day, are you getting leads? Are people calling you? Have you signed any new clients? Have you gotten any new? The thing about podcasting, it has like collateral benefits, right? That's actually like a banking term. But like, as a podcaster, you'll get speaking engagements. Somebody will say, hey, I saw you on that podcast, or I heard you on that podcast. Would you come to this convention? Or you never know what investor might have listened to you on a podcast. I mean, like, it's kind of hard to measure, but at the end of the day, it's results. Did you have anything positive in your business happen because of the podcast? And there's your ROI. And a lot of people think about monetizing podcasts like very directly, like I'm making money off of ads. I have a sponsor. No, the monetization is in the relationships that you build and the contracts and the deals that you close after with those people that you strategically targeted to interview because they can get you business. That's the ROI. If you want to become a popular podcaster, then that ain't got nothing to do with your business. Like, wait, if you're trying to be popular, if you're trying to be a public figure, then yes, a podcast, like the numbers and the downloads matter, and you're going to have a PR agent, and you're going to be spending thousands of dollars on ads to make sure that people are listening to your podcast. But if you're a business owner, then downloads don't matter. It's the relationships that you've created because of that podcast. So a lot of people are looking at the wrong metrics, And plus, it's a small pool. Like, I don't know if you know this, but like if you get 200 downloads in the first 7 days, you're in the top 20% of podcasts. If you get 460 downloads in the first 7 days, you're in the top 10%. So what that means is that there's a deficiency, there's a shortage. The demand is greater than the supply. So being a popular, high download podcast is not the goal if you're a business. It should be the relationships you've created from it, because you could trick that system with paid ads, and you could easily climb to the top of that. But you could have 10,000 downloads, but if ain't nobody booking discovery calls, then what's the point?
You're onto something. I love these questions that come up in conversation. But what I've noticed too, like if I look at a company's page, if you go all the way down to their footer, they would have like a podcast. Do you believe that companies should have a podcast? Is that a route they should go, or should they avoid that?
No, they should 100%, because a podcast is an SEO machine, right? The more I learn about SEO, the more I learn that we're all working for robots, and all content is SEO. A podcast is a marketing asset SEO machine, literally. So think about it. You record a podcast, you've created the relationship. Now you've got an audio file. Now you've got a video file that can go on YouTube, second largest search engine in the world. Now you've got metadata that's going on both of those things. It's loaded with SEO keywords. So a big mistake people make when they're talking about their descriptions is like, oh, we'll sit with Molly on Molly's podcast where they talk about this with so-and-so. And you're like, no, the first 3 sentences should be like, join us today as we talk about disruption and AI and how that affects small businesses with, so-and-so from this company, on today's episode of Molly's show with everybody puts himself forward. It's their face on the thing. They put themselves forward. They miss the whole SEO opportunity. They put episode 979,000 bro, you just killed your whole SEO. Why don't ever put the episode number in the title? You're wasting SEO. It should say disruption technology and ChatGPT and real estate with guest name. It should never have anything that's not an SEO keyword in it, right? Because everything is SEO. Then you've got a blog post. You can take that metadata, make it a blog post, embed the video right on there to your YouTube channel. Attach the transcription on page. Don't put it behind a button and a download. You get no SEO value. Copy and paste that Mickey Flicky right on the bottom of the blog post so you get on-page SEO, because your transcription should be full of words like disruption, technology, ChatGPT, real estate. So that's how you gain domain authority. That's how Google pushes people to your page. Then from there, you've got, social media graphics that you can use with yourself or with your guests to get them to talk about your content. I mean, it creates an arsenal of assets that most people don't use properly, admittedly, right? And it's all SEO. If you're putting a new podcast on your company website, monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, with everything I just talked about, you're going to build domain authority and backlinks. And when people are searching for those questions on Google, Google's going to say, hey, we have an answer, and there's a video. There's text and video. So, of course, Google's going to direct them to your website. And that's the secret of SEO right there. I mean, it's a million miles deep, but that's the high-level thing. So every business should have a podcast, but not for the sake of having a podcast. Do 12 of them, one a month. Stretch the hell out of that SEO content. Be very intentional about it. Don't be somebody that's like episode 937. I don't know about you, but when I see that, I think to myself, what have you not said? Like, you must not be doing it right if you're still doing it 937 episodes later. I don't think people understand it doesn't have the authority that people think it does, and it ruins your searchability.
Yeah. Couple things. Where were you in my early days of podcasting? Because I made that mistake. I was episode 42. We sit down with author. We kind of go from there. But man, I'm gonna really take my time on this title for this one, because I gotta make sure I bring it. But it's so spot on. And you touched on ChatGPT, and that's really helped me out a lot. I feel like I've made a lot of improvement in the description aspect of podcasting and generate a good title. It's helpful. Can you talk about how AI is kind of helping, not just only in the podcast space, but also with content creation and ideas, etc.?
For sure, it'll make your life so much easier. You can throw, I use Jasper, right, which is a copywriting AI tool. It's the same engine that ChatGPT uses. It's just copywriting. Highly recommend. I'll throw you my affiliate link because it's expensive, but it is out of control good. You can write YouTube descriptions, YouTube titles, blog posts, meta tag, literally anything you want to write, you can do it through there, and it'll ask you what's the keyword you want to focus on to make sure you rank. These are things most people, if you're not into copywriting, are even thinking about. So it just shortens the gap. You can throw a whole transcription into the content improver on Jasper, and it'll literally write your metadata for a podcast, the description, the key takeaways, and then you can go in and put the timestamps and some quotes. It'll save so much work for you and really dial in on what's important. And a lot of times we don't understand that what's important are the keywords. It's always about the keywords. We think it's about the conversation, but it's not. It's about the keywords. We're talking about branding, podcasting, ChatGPT. That's what's driving this episode. That's what people are going to learn if they tune in, right? So those are the words that you need to use a lot.
Yeah, it's spot on. Yo, so Molly, I kind of want to go, I love to go off script sometimes because have a really good conversation. So if you were to start all over right now in this era of just social media and all of this access that you have at your fingertips, and you have the knowledge that you have right now, starting over, what does that look like for you?
Sorry about my dogs. I have
No, you're good. You're good.
I think I would be doing the same thing. Sorry about that. I think I would be doing the same thing. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Costa Rica. When you live in Costa Rica, dogs.
I could edit, Molly. I'm good. I could edit really good.
Okay.
You're fine.
Hold on one second, girls. Okay. If I could do it all over again, I think I'd be doing the same thing. I probably would have taken a more linear path to get there, a little bit more straight. But I really enjoy what I do. I really enjoy working with people. I love strategy. I love sitting and meeting clients for the first time and then coming back with them with like a whole strategy for branding and branded content. I genuinely love it all because I get to flex my creative side, I get to flex my business side, and my marketing skills. Sorry, they're killing me right now. They only
Yeah,
bark when I'm on an appointment or something important.
my dog does the same. It's all right. Did you want to pick up from that question? Or
No, I think that's it because that's really like I would think I would be doing the same thing.
yeah, awesome. So I want to kind of like swing back. I've noticed a lot since say 2020 to 2023 to how content is being distributed. For one, when the entire world shut down, when the entire world shut down, um, a lot of people switched from in-person speaking engagements to online summits and like virtual conferences, which I found really, really beneficial. Um, Instead of going to in-person networking events, there's a lot of virtual events now. I want to talk to you about the entire virtual space, um, how to navigate in a virtual space, pros and cons, and how to kind of like just be proactive and not just do things just to do it, because you seem like someone that's very efficient with what you want to do, how you want to do things. How do you navigate in that virtual space?
Well, I think the biggest thing is like present the quality that you want to get back. Have a microphone, have a decent camera, like make sure your dogs aren't barking in the background. Really bring some value, to your audience, and not focus so much on like selling people, but actually bringing some value and take advantage of every opportunity. That's the great thing about the pandemic. Like, it was terrible for a lot of reasons. Like, I'm still in grief over a lot of loss and everything else, but like at the same time, it changed the whole world. Like, I'm able to run my business in Costa Rica. That's a dream. Like, if you had told me 3 years ago or 3 years and 3 months ago, right, that I'd be able to work, like, I wouldn't have believed you. So I think instead of lamenting over the changes, right, and say, oh, no, man, embrace that. You can speak in, like, I'm the #1 speaker for the Kalamazoo Social Media Week. Like, I don't live in Michigan, you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing what you can do now. You can go on podcasts. I've been on like 6 podcasts in the month of March. Like, it's been fantastic. Every one of them has been great. I've really enjoyed those conversations. Like, embrace the virtual world. Make it work for you instead of begrudgingly upset about the changes and how different it is. It's actually opened up the doors for business and opportunity and relationships and everything else.
I couldn't agree more. This was one of the things that I launched in the beginning of the pandemic, this podcast. And it was when the smoke cleared, this was the thing that was just solid. And I get a lot of return on investment on just like doing these interviews, not financially, but just in value, in conversation. Do you know what it would look like if potentially if I wanted to just pick your brain and ask you about marketing and branding and all these cool stuff, and I wasn't a podcaster? I would have to pay for that mentor session. Sometimes, podcasting kind of, swings into that where it's like, man, hold on, this is a question I want you to ask specifically for me. That's why I have some.
You're like, let me go off script here a little
I'm
bit.
good on that, Molly. I'm telling one thing about me. Oh, I'm gonna ask about questions.
Hey, man. I mean, you
Yeah,
put in the effort of producing the
yeah,
podcast. You should,
yeah. That's
you know.
it. Yeah, of course. That's why I'm like, hey, is there a way that I could do this podcasting thing in a better way? But there was something that you said earlier that I want to swing back to. You touched on this newsletter thing on LinkedIn. I recently launched a fitness blog just last week. Super excited about this fitness blog because I have a background in personal training for the last 9 years. I've kind of like been out of the space, but now I'm back on my fitness journey. I'm holding myself accountable. I'm working out as much as I can. I actually worked out for this interview so I could be even more pumped up. What are some suggestions, some tips on the writing side when it comes to blogs and newsletters, because I believe right now I'm on Medium. I'm using Medium. I'm not using LinkedIn newsletter, or some tips and tricks in that.
Well, you can copy and paste your Medium post and put it on LinkedIn. You know, the great thing about the LinkedIn newsletter is it sends a notification to everybody on LinkedIn, and it sends a notification to their email. So like everyone sees it. And when you start the newsletter, it'll say, "Hey, Molly just started this newsletter. Do you want to join it?" It sends that to every single person on your contact list for you. So you'll see some good results there, and you don't have to. You're just leveraging, right? A perfect example of repurpose. You're not repurposing it. You're leveraging it. You're leveraging the same content on multiple platforms. You're not repurposing a Medium article. That sounds like recycling, right? Or like those Instagram videos when they buy a cake from the grocery store and they scrape all the icing off of it and they decorate it all fancy. Like, that's repurposing. Like, that is not what you are doing here. You are taking your content and you're leveraging it on multiple platforms. So I think that's like an important distinction for sure.
You're onto something. Keyword repurposing. One of the things that I do with this podcast is, if there is a aha moment in the interview, like a 30-second clip, 60-second, I would cut it. I would kind of like repurpose it to maybe like YouTube Shorts is what I like to use. I love YouTube Shorts right now.
Yeah, YouTube Shorts are popping right now.
Really like YouTube Shorts. So I would kind of like put that content out there. Talk to us about repurposing content. Like, does it matter? I know it's a silly question, but I have to ask. Like, does it matter how old the content is, or is it more so based on the message behind the content? And where should you be repurposing that content?
Well, I think it goes back to the other discussion, where your clients, and is it relevant? That's the biggest question. So a lot of clients will hit us up and say, "Hey, we have all these old podcasts. Can you go through them and find the moments and clip them?" And I just say no, because what was relevant 6 months ago isn't relevant now. Were you talking about ChatGPT 6 months ago? Because if not, were you talking about returning to the office? Because that's not relevant anymore. Like, life moves so fast now. The news cycle is like a half a second. I mean, it's really like what happened an hour ago. We're already out of the loop. Since we've been on this podcast, we've missed out on a whole day's news cycle. Like, it just happens so fast. And so, yes, there's great moments, right? But again, I think it's leveraging. You're not really I know, and it's a word, but it's like a mindset thing, right? Like, you're not repurposing it. You're leveraging your time on multiple platforms. Like, it's content. It's meant to go on platforms, right? So I think the key is using AI, right? There's technology like a company called Latte. Like, I'll shout them out. They just launched, and you can use them to clip your videos and make social media content and all that. But do it when it's recent and flood your audience then, because a lot of times, like, what was going on a year ago? Do you even remember? Like, something you said a year ago is probably not going to be relevant.
I don't remember what I said a year ago at all. But it's you said something. You've said so much, and it's like I'm sitting here in awe. It's like, man, this is why I love podcasting so much, because not just because of the opportunities, but like dots start to connect. It really starts to make sense for me. And it's like, man, you're hitting the nail right in the head. Molly, I can't tell you. There was like, I interviewed for a startup tech company. This was months ago, and I got the role. The the recruiter that I spoke with, she's like, "Yeah, yeah, we heard your podcast." My podcast?
See?
That's not on my resume. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm telling you.
I kid you not. I kid you not. I was kind of like taken back, like, really? I mean, I'm sure companies do their due diligence, but it's like, when you have, I'm noticing this now, like when you have like a podcast like this, or something like a blog, or something that gives you some sort of social proof and authority, it kind of goes to bat for you a little bit. Can you touch on that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's the collateral benefits of podcasting. Like, I have a client who hired a couple great people who are like, "I heard your podcast and I listened to all 47 episodes and I want to work for you because I believe in what you believe in and I like who you are." I mean, who would have thought podcasting could be a recruitment tool? And you know how expensive it is to hire a recruiter in the corporate world? Like, that's a huge saving. So, but that's why being authentic really matters. And you don't have to be everywhere. You just need to be where your people are. And if your people are on LinkedIn, then be on LinkedIn, right? And then it's probably a recruiter on LinkedIn that was like, "Oh, yeah, this is good content, right? So, I think being authentic, because that's the other thing. Like, imagine if I had a really buttoned up podcast and somebody hired me and I'm like, yo, what's up? They're like, what did you, what kind of bait and switch was that? Like, no, I want people to understand the full ridiculousness that is me from jump. And then you're going to hire me because of that, not in spite of that, or not because you don't know about that. So I think it's like, be authentic all the time. Don't talk about things that you think people want to talk about. Talk about what's relevant and how it matters. Like, I'm not a huge like AI expert, but I can certainly talk to you about how, AI can speed your processes up for sure,
Mm.
Will that be as relevant in 6 months? Probably not. And we'll be talking about something else.
Mm. Molly, I heard this quote once and it always resonated with me. And it just came to me now. So I want to share this with you and I want you to kind of like take it from there. No one cares about your brand until they know your story.
It's the truth. It's the truth. I've been in this right on LinkedIn of just posting business stuff, and then I realized, because I kind of divested from LinkedIn. I'm not gonna lie. The George Floyd summer, it was like I didn't realize how many racist old white men were on my feed until that summer, and so every time I logged into LinkedIn, it was like, so I sort
You
of
had a rough
divested
patch.
a little. I mean, I was like, whoa, what room did I end up in? Holy guacamole, man. So I, really divested and blocked and unfollowed a lot of people. But I've been slowly kind of making my way back. And I realized I don't share any of my like Costa Rica story on there. So I've been posting pictures of my puppies and the sunrises with the volcano and more personal stuff because I kind of forgot about that a little bit. But like my personal Facebook is a true testament to that. Like, I'm very open with my life there after it happens. I'll tell people, oh, this is in 2018, I had a miscarriage and they thought I had cancer. And that's when I will tell people in retrospect that I'm very open with those things because I know that it helps other people, right? It connects them to me and they're rooting for me. There's people on my Facebook that have been friends with me for like 10 years who I've never met in person who are more supportive than my own family members. And it's because I've been very authentically myself, right? People in business see me as one way. People on my Facebook have seen the entire journey, and so I think there's a lot of value in that because I want to work with people I like, right? Like I want to work with people who are a little bit of a smart ass and got some flavor to them because I'm from DC and I miss my DC people. Like I had a meeting with two ladies this morning, a second lady, and it was a 7 a.m. meeting, and I was excited about it. Like, because they're from DC, and I was like, oh, I miss my DC people, like, so much. So I want to do business with those people. So I want to be me all the time because then I'm going to attract people who are going to be cool with me, and then we're going to work well together. I don't want to attract people that are, like, really buttoned up and offended by curse words. I'm like, wait till you hear about racism and the patriarchy of curse words upset you, like,
Oh man. Yep. That's just one thing. It's kind of like just maybe kind of swing back to. I'm Yahavy, swing back St. Clair. I say swing back a lot, but it just makes me think of just like in the beginning of this interview. It's like, yeah, just you pretty much being unapologetically you being you, and if who's for you, it's gonna be for you. If they're not for you, they won't be there. And like that's the thing that where it's like your aura. That's the word I'm looking for. Your aura, where it's like, man, like you say how I'm animated, but this is really how I am though. Like
yeah.
this is, and that's the thing where it's like, man, some people it's like they're kind of like used to people being a certain way ish. I'm like, yo, bro, this is really how I am, online, offline. This is just me, and like, you know, that's it. Like it's as simple as it is. But being me brought me here. That's what I always say. Being me brought me here. It's who I am that people want to kind of connect with me. I never had to. 'Cause I've sat down with a lot of successful people. I'm just so many successful people, but I never really had to change who I am just to have a conversation. I never do that. I can't. Molly, that's just. I'm from New York. I know you're from DC, but we don't do that. We can't
Yeah,
do that.
exactly. My mom and dad are from Brooklyn and the Bronx, so like, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, you know. But yeah, like that's just how it is. So I know we're kind of summarizing towards like the end, but like if you could, because there was just so much for me. This was one of those podcast interviews where it's like I feel like you were on here just to help me out with like branding and marketing and all this good stuff. But I also understand like now we got to break that fourth wall with the listeners. If you could pretty much gift wrap and bow tie everything that we talked about today, what is the takeaway message you want for the listeners or anyone watching?
Take the straightest path to the money and reverse engineer it. You don't have to be everywhere. You don't need to start a TikTok account. You don't need to do all that, because 9 times out of 10, people do all this marketing and they don't even have a website to send people to that collects their emails. So you're just, it's like you're fishing, but you're not reeling them in. You know, it's so just less is more. You know, take the straightest path to the money and be authentic, you know, and be really, really strategic. Because one of my favorite words is reverse engineer or phrase, whatever. Like, I heard a quote on, I was doing something last week and I heard this quote and they said, the hardest thing is deciding what you want, getting it is easy, right? And that is the biggest truth. And so I always tell people, what do you want your life to look like, right? Like, on a very granular level. Where do you wake up? What time is it? Early, late? Do you stay in bed? Is it cold? Is it hot? What do you do for the first hour of your day, 2 hours of your day, 3 hours of your day? How many hours a day do you want to work? Where do you want to live? What do you want to do? Like, we don't allow ourselves the opportunity to think about that. And who do you want to work with? Like, it's like, oh, I just want some clients. I want to make some money. Okay, that's cool, but not all clients are created equal, my friend. Let me tell you, okay? Some clients, you're like, get out. Get out, right? Like, some clients are more damaging to your company than not. So you have to be really clear on who do you want to work with, and then speak to them and be very, very strategic about it. And just remember that less really is more, right? We're in this trap of 1 million downloads. Dude, if 1,000 people contacted me tomorrow to hire me, it would be a big problem for me. I don't want 1,000 people to hire me tomorrow. If 10 people tried to hire me tomorrow, I'd be like, whoa, y'all. Like, give a girl a break. We're not that we don't need a massive amount of numbers, and most people don't either. So what do you need every month to... Oh, my goodness. How much money do you need to make every month to be comfortable? How many new clients is that? Reverse engineer it. Okay, well, maybe you only need to get 1 client a month.
Oh man, this was really fun. I really did enjoy this. Man, a lot of aha moments, a lot of good gems, good takeaways. You know, kind of just looking at, you know, not being afraid to start over. Like, you know, when I look at, you know, after this, summarizing this entire conversation that we had today, when I look back at ideas that I had about, like, let's use fitness, for example, my personal training background, looking at that with a mature mindset of, okay, what's my story? Where do my clients generate from? The quickest pathway to the money, keep it simple. That's it. I feel like not just me, because I know I'm guilty of this, but I know there are other people that could relate, where they try to get fancy or they try to do a little too much. They try to be here and here. And it's like, you know, the expression, you try to catch 2 rabbits, you're going to catch a none, right? You can't be everywhere. So it's kind of like stay in your lane, be a master at one thing before you try to master everything. Molly, boy, did I enjoy this interview, because you have given me, I feel like you've given me some homework. And I want to say thank you. I appreciate your time. I want to say thank you so much, because what you don't know, is this: a lot of what you say, a lot of you sharing your story and your expertise and your knowledge today, that doesn't go on deaf ears. I can't tell you how many times where I felt stuck, or I was faced with a problem, and I go back to a podcast interview. I'm like, wait a minute, this person told me to do this. And it just opens a whole new world for me. So I'm appreciative of that. I know you got that going on. I look over and you're like,
these dogs, yo, I don't know what they got in the yard. I'm like, shut up. I'm trying to get them.
Molly, you're good. I'm over here giving you your flowers. I'm looking over you like this. But this is what I'm talking about. But when you talk about that authentic, this is what happens. Like, this is okay. This is what happens on podcast recordings. It's totally fine. But like always, for the listeners, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I will catch you in the next episode. This is the StclairSpeaks Show. I'm out. Peace.
Oh my God, these dogs, these fucking